Why did you become a teacher?
Well, I guess certainly from round about what back then we called first year, what we now call year 7 of secondary school. I can remember sitting in certain lessons, and I've been enjoying my history lessons, I've been enjoying my English lessons. We didn't have media studies back in those days because this was like before the dinosaurs were clomping around and stuff. But we had English and history, and I really enjoyed those lessons. I saw the negative side of teaching as well, because some of my friends were teachers. One was a maths teacher and one was a music teacher, and I'd go around their house in the evenings and they always seemed to be marking. However, I still thought, you know what, it'd be really good to teach lessons, talk about stuff that I really enjoy all day, and plus the fact I thought I'll be helping out youngsters, I'll be helping out people rather than just making a profit out of people. And from my own personal for the want of a better phrase, on a Wednesday afternoon, for my better personal sort of lifestyle choice, I'd prefer to be in a job which helps other people rather than being in a job where I make money out of people. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. We need businesses to make society run, but it's just my own personal preference. So I guess certainly since I was about 11 or 12, I've been thinking along the lines of that I'd like to become a teacher. I think my mother may have sowed a few ideas into my head when I was younger as well. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was in year 10, so my memory might be playing tricks with me, but I do believe that she was sort of sowing some seeds into my head about going to college, going to university, then getting a job. And I think, if I rightly remember, teaching came up as a possibility, but that was a long time ago as well. So I'd say just obviously certain teachers inspired me, certain subjects interested me and infused me, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be better than sitting in a factory putting stuff on a line all day. We're going to have some interesting times.
What are the responsibilities of your many roles here at Blue Coat?
Right, okay, let's see now. Well, I'm the quality nominee of BTECs. That means I have to check that other BTEC courses, they've got their course books done, they've got the assignment sheets written correctly, that they've done their standardisation, and usually because I'm the quality nominee, and if they've got a subject where there's only one teacher or one main teacher and they need someone to check the to do IV their briefs, they'll usually ask me because I'm the person who oversees the BTEC overall. So that's one big responsibility. Then the other responsibility is being the head of faculties. That means at the moment I've got one set of books I've got to check marking off from one teacher. I've got to check 5 other teachers' marking, and then I've got to then I have to observe them at least once a year teaching, and I have to work with the senior management and see what scores they've got from them as well. I have to hold meetings where we discuss teaching and learning strategies and how to implement the whole school marking policies, the whole school literacy policies within the faculty. If there are any, I don't often have to deal with any discipline issues because most of the teachers in the faculty are people like Miss Cuff and Mr Patel, Miss Kangura, who have got responsibilities, which means they don't get that many problems in their classes. But if I do get kids being boisterous, obstreperous or whatever, and we've gone through the system, then the final port of call before we go to head to college is me. Another job responsibility is coordinating the careers advice, making sure Mrs Murphy, who does do a good job at interviewing everybody, making sure all that gets done, making sure that the teachers know which kids are being interviewed, on which day, etc., etc. And I coordinate any work experience which goes on in the school, which means I work with other staff to try and organise this, because as you can appreciate, trying to do all that on my own, it just won't get done.
What other career pathways may you have taken if you weren't a teacher?
I'm not really sure, because the sort of other stuff I'd like to do, I don't think are financially viable as a career alternative unless you're very lucky or you're highly talented and that talent gets recognised. What I mean by this, I'd like to be a scriptwriter for a TV drama. I'd like to be an audio play writer. I'd like to be a writer in general. However, unless you're very lucky and you're very talented, the income you'd get, I mean, I wouldn't be able to run a household on it. I wouldn't be able to feed the kids, pay the mortgage, etc., etc. If I were a freelance writer, and I'm probably only earning about 10 or 15 grand a year if I were very lucky. So they're the only other things I'm really interested in. Maybe going into publishing, that might have been an alternative, or working in some sort of administrative type job in the public, in the civil service. However, I think that particular one, where it's something I'd consider doing if I needed a job desperately, I get the impression that I'll probably get bored after a while. But the writing one, which requires a lot of skill and creativity, is the one I'd really like to do in addition or instead of teaching. Isn't really financially viable unless I hit it really lucky. You know, I wrote a book and it was popular in the same way. So like the Harry Potter series was popular. That happens to one person in like a few hundred million, let alone a few million. So I think the one good thing about teaching, even nowadays in times of job insecurity, there's still an element of job security there, and job security to me is very important.
What were your ambitions when you first entered teaching?
To get through the day without all the kids throwing stuff at me. To be honest, as a qualified history teacher with English as my second subject, I would have never imagined I would end up as head of media studies and head of the vocational faculty. That's been an interesting development, and quite a challenging development at times, because I'm quite often taken out my comfort zone. For me, it's far easier to teach and develop the skills of writing and source work, which are the sort of two, and using PEE as a structure. I can do that really, really easily, because it's what I've been trained to do. However, when it comes to more vocational and practical courses, like teaching how to use cameras and stuff, this is something I've had to learn as I've gone along, and it's like using the software. I'm self-taught. I've never actually been on a course which has taught me how to use the various web development programs we use, and you know, even how to use digital moving image software. I'm quite lucky that I can rely on people like Mr. Davis and one or two other members of staff to help me out on the technical side of things, because I'm self-taught, and there are times when, particularly when I first started teaching this type of course, where I found it quite frightening, because I thought, I'm not used to doing this. But I suppose it stretches you as a person if you take on stuff which sort of deep down you're rather nervous of, and because you're not going to fail, because if you fail, the kids are going to fail, and you can't. That's just not an option. So you have to push yourself and go off in directions that you weren't anticipate. But no, I certainly didn't expect to end up being a head of media studies and head of vocational faculty. I think I was thinking of about becoming head of history, maybe a head of humanities, which is head of humanities is like Miss Hannah's job. So I think that's where I would have originally thought I was going to go to back in 1996 when I first started teacher training. But well, life's thrown a few interesting curveballs, and media studies is really quite interesting. There's a lot of stuff I enjoy studying, because you might think that it's you lot who are doing the learning in this subject, but I'm learning at the same time because it's not something I went to school to learn, so I'm learning on the job, so to speak. So, you know, sometimes you start off at a career and you go off on a completely different tangent to what you're anticipating doing.
Do you think teaching is a growing interest?
Of a growing interest. I think it's always got its attraction, because I think obviously the vast majority of the population in this country go through education themselves, and therefore you've got people going through the system who think, actually I'd like to do this, I'd like to help others. I don't know whether it's growing or whether it seems to me it manages to perpetuate itself. Yeah, there's always enough interest there. There's always enough people who are going into teaching, come from a variety of backgrounds. It's not as if we've got a recruitment crisis. I think the only problem we do have in teaching is the issue that a lot of staff, well, allegedly from what I read, a lot of staff drop out after about 4 or 5 years. Anecdotally, I'd say yes, some do, but since I've been teaching, quite a lot of people I've known have stayed in until they're at retirement age. So I'm not sure how true that is, but I'm certainly not aware of a recruiting crisis, and there always seems to be youngsters or people new to the profession coming into this school to learn how to teach. So I'd say it perpetuates itself. You know, there's enough people who go through the system and think this is a noble cause, I'd like to try and become a teacher, and they give it a try. Most succeed, some don't, because it's a little bit more difficult than people realise. I'm not saying it's the most hardest job in the world, but it's a bit more challenging than some people realise. I sometimes joke to my friends and say, like, if I realised that I had to come in and do work during my holidays, I'd have gone and done something a bit easier. But no, I'd say it perpetuates itself. You know, there's enough interest to keep the job going for the future generations. I wouldn't say it's increased or decreased over time. Politicians' answer. Nice and long-winded.
That concludes this interview. Thank you very much for taking some time to participate.